Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, and today we are starting another weekly reading vlog, kind of. I am reading fantasy romance, if you couldn't tell from the title. Maybe I haven't put it in the title, but I'm pretty sure I have. Last year, no, we'll go back even further. September of 2020. I, for some god knows why reason, decided to put the kiss cushion on my TBR for Becca's Bookopoli in September. And I loved it. I had such a good time. I give it 4 stars, but honestly in my mind I have bumped it up to a 5-star. I love that book. It is my favorite romance I've read so far. I have not read that many, but that is the best one I've read so far. After that I was like, hold on, could I be a romance reader? Last year I then decided I'm going to do a whole Valentine's Day reading vlog where I try to melt my icy little heart by reading a bunch of romances. And I read 3 or 4, but it wasn't the best. And for some reason at the very start of January I was like, yeah, I'm totally gonna do a part 2 and I'll read more of like really heavy romances, make it like the love hypothesis and all this. And then just a part of my brain went, but what if you do fantasy romance this time? So I tweeted out, hey, recommend me fantasy romance. And by then, you know, I put it out there. I can't take it back now. So I'm doing it. And I mean, that sounds really negative. And it's just because I'm slightly nervous about this because I mean, I'm always nervous when I'm doing things with romance because I know a lot of romance readers think that we're just doing it to make fun of them, which is not the case. I'm trying to find what I like in it, and that does involve me finding things that I do not like. I'm a little more nervous about this one because of the fact I haven't actually read any fantasy romance, or at least not ones that I've liked, because I've technically read the first book in Crescent City, House of Earth and Blood, and I gave that 2 stars. I didn't really like it that much. Even though I actually didn't mind the romance part of that, which shocked me because I hated the romance in Throne of Glass. I'm afraid that with the fantasy romance, it's going to be too angsty for me. Like when I read a romance, I'm reading it because I want cute, fluffy, like just good times. And when I read a fantasy, I'm looking for a plot and action and politics and all of this. And I'm not sure will I get that from fantasy romance, because I imagine when it's a romance in fantasy, like the stakes are automatically like times 100. And so like, it's like way more angsty and way more is at stake and all of this. And I'm not sure, am I going to enjoy that? But there's also the possibility that I'm going to eat it up. This has been very rambly, so I'm going to just tell you the books that I'm reading. I'm going to be reading From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout. The audiobook is on SCRIBD, and I think maybe the ebook. I'm also reading Radiance by Grace Draven. I'm also going to be reading Fortuna Sworn by KJ Sutton. And then the 4th book I want to read is The Bridge Kingdom by Danielle L. Jensen. And this one is like the one I think I'm most excited for. My predictions, I think Fortuna Sworn is going to be my least favorite. I think I'm going to give it a 2-star. Kate and Cassidy have given it 2 stars. I think we're going to give it a 2-star. But hopefully this is one of the things that we will disagree on, because there have been things before. See, Radiance for me is like, I don't know a lot of people who have read it to be able to like compare it to my taste. But I think I'm going to put that 2nd. So I think 3rd is going to be From Blood and Ash. Like when people say the synopsis, they're all on about how like she's a maiden, something to do with the gods, she can never be seen, never touched, and like it's kind of like she doesn't really know why. And like I'm always like, oh my god, that sounds so good. And then they're like, and then she gets a new bodyguard, and I'm like, oh. So like the first half of the synopsis really interests me, and then like the romance part, I'm like, I mean, I'll give it a shot. So I think this is gonna be a 3 stars. I think that I'm gonna like the magic stuff and the like mystery stuff more than I care about the relationship. That is my prediction. I'm going to put Radiance again. I'm gonna say that I'm gonna give it a 3-star, just because like middle of the road, not too ambitious. The only person I can think of that has read this is Riley Marie, and I think she gave it 5 stars. I like loved it. And we don't have very similar tastes at all, but when I hear her talk about fantasy romances, just the way she speaks about them gets me really excited for them. So I'm hoping that I will like read this and love it. And then the one that I think I'm going to like the most is The Bridge Kingdom. Again, this is another one that I've heard Riley Marie talk about. I think I'm gonna say that I'm gonna give it 4 stars. I'm not sure will any of these be a 5-star. I'm hoping so, but I actually haven't had any 5 stars this year. So hopefully I will get one, but it seems to be a bit of a drought for a 5-star right now. So I'm not gonna put too much pressure. So I will see you when I've like started to read stuff.
Okay, so I've started The Bridge Kingdom by Danielle L. Johnson, and I'm currently 55 pages in, which is 15%. And I was gonna give you like 50% update and then like a 100% update, but I just wanted to tell you I'm really enjoying this. I'm having such a good time. This is so good. The banter. There's enough political stuff and scheming happening to keep my fantasy loving heart at peace. And the banter between the two. Hello, so it is now Tuesday, and I guess I'm giving you a bit of an I started the audiobook for From Blood and Ash, and as I also mentioned, I got about a third of the way through The Bridge Kingdom, and I'm really enjoying both of them so far. Like, it's nothing like super amazing in either of them, like plot-wise or anything, or even like characters-wise. Like, I don't like truly like love them, but like I'm really only at the start for both of them, but both of them are like really captivating and enjoyable so far, so that's good, and we're gonna hope that it keeps going that way. I am listening to the audiobook from Blood and Ash though, and I really like the narrator narrating in general, but the voice they put on for Hawk is it's like, I think she's trying to do some sort of a British accent, and it is not working for me at all. He sounds kind of creepy. I'll update you when I'm further into either of them. Day 2 of the vlog, but like day 1 of reading From Blood and Ash. I'm finished with what I want to read for today. I'm like 17-18% of the way through. And okay, so there's a couple of things. So overall, I'm having a good time. Like, Poppy intrigues me. The world and what is happening, there's kind of like a little bit of a mystery thing that has just started. Again, also like intrigued. I'm having a good time so far, and it's having a lot of fun, and it's very like easy just to put it on and just listen. Like, it's not something that you like want to stop listening to. Like, it's very easy just to put on and let it play. I do have a couple of things. Overall, I do enjoy the narrator, but as I mentioned, so far I do not like the voice that she puts on for Hawk. I don't like it. And the last thing I wanted to say is I have a theory, and if it happens, I'm like immediately docking it a star because I hate this trope, and I don't want to say it because it's gonna happen, isn't it? I just, in my heart, only 17% of the way through, in my heart, I know that this is gonna happen. It's gonna annoy me so much. Right now, which, as I said, I'm only like, I'm getting near the 20% mark. But right now I would put it at a 4-star, but this early on, there's a lot of room for movement. So I'm going back to The Bridge Kingdom now, I think. It is Wednesday morning, and so I updated you last night when I put down From Blood and Ash at about 20% through. And then I picked up The Bridge Kingdom for a little bit longer, and so I'm now at the 50% mark, but I think I'm actually at about 56% of the way through. But we'll say 50% check-in. And I'm still enjoying it so far, but it has kind of, I feel like the first 25% I was like really intrigued. I was really enjoying like the little glimpses we had of the characters and all of this, and the second 25% not so much. Like, I still was having fun, and there was still like a bit of banter between the characters, but I feel like not enough to convince me that they're like gonna be like falling in love. Like, we're 50% of the way through, and I don't see a lot of that at all, and like, I don't want it to feel rushed. And so normally I would feel happy that at 50% they're not like already in love, but I guess I wanted it to be like a little bit like, and I think we're kind of at the point where she's like kind of starting to question things in her life. So yeah, so I'm hoping that the next 50% will be good, because it's a short book, so I'm hoping it doesn't feel rushed. But I am having fun. So yeah, and I'm enjoying like the world and like the politics of it all. So yeah, so we'll see. It's Wednesday. It's almost 8 o'clock, and I have finished my bit of From Blood and Ash for today. I'm kind of assumed to be reading about 20% every day, so yeah. Oof. Okay, so I liked this section less than I liked the 20% that I read yesterday. Also, I bought the bone chips today. I ordered it last week and it arrived. But yeah. Okay, so yeah, I liked the first 20% yesterday. Like, it was like nothing exceptional, but I was having a really good time. It was very enjoyable. It was very easy to just sit down and listen to. And I liked Poppy. Like, she's a bit, like, there's definitely like a couple of things, like she's like supposed to be like really sheltered and naive, yet a lot of things like don't add up, and it kind of like changes depending on to suit the story, whether she's like super naive or whether she knows more than she kind of should. But like that actually doesn't bother me that much because I enjoy reading her perspective and being in her head. It is quite interesting, and I like the magic system and like the questions of like what is going on. And like it's a little repetitive, but I still am overall enjoying that bit. But I would say 30%, so like the first 10% that I read today, I was still enjoying. This like second 10%ish that I read today, that brought me up to, I'm up to 42%. Oh boy, I started to dislike it a lot. I do not like Hawk at all. Not at all. I hate him. I'm hoping he will grow on me. As I said, I'm pretty sure the trope that I hate is going to be in here and it's going to annoy me. But like there was a bit that like confirmed that to me even more. There was like 2 bits. And so that's going to annoy me. But like I'm preparing myself to be annoyed, so hopefully it won't annoy me when it happens. But I do not like him. He is very controlling and territorial, and I'm like, you have no right to. You don't know her. He likes to think that he knows what she feels more than she does. Like, oh, like she constantly tells him, don't call me this nickname. Don't call me princess. And he does anyway. I mean, in the start of the book, like he was like basically on top of her and she kept asking him to get off and he did not. And it is just getting on my nerves, to be honest. It does not seem to listen to her, or he thinks that he knows her better than she knows herself. And yeah, it is getting on my nerves. So yeah, so I don't like him, and so I doubt that I'm going to like the romance very much, and it is a fantasy romance. So the romance part, we're gonna kind of just, strike through. The fantasy part is still intriguing me. Like, it's nothing like mind-blowing, exceptional. Like, it's very like YA tropey, but like it's fun. So like I'm not bothered that much. Hello. So I have lots to update you on. I think so. I last spoke to you yesterday about From Blood and Ash, maybe? I don't know. I think so. But it is now Thursday morning. When I had a break between classes, I finished The Bridge Kingdom by Danielle L. Jensen, and I really struggled between a 3 and a 4 star. I don't want to give 0.5 ratings out anymore, but I think I'm going to settle on a 3. I'm gonna sit with it a little longer and see if it changes, but I feel like, yeah, I feel like it's probably a 3, but it's a like really high, decent 3, and like a book that I would recommend, especially to people who do like fantasy romance. I don't even think I told you about what any of these books have been about, but so full review of The Bridge Kingdom is, so we follow 2 different points of view, Lara and Aaron, and they are supposed to be getting married to each other, and it is because of an alliance, because they had been at war, and Aaron's kingdom holds control over this bridge, and all Lara's life she has been led to believe that they are evil people. They are basically starving her population and all of this, and she is going there to marry him for an alliance, but also because she plans to spy on him and get information about the bridge and how to invade, basically. And So that's the basic synopsis of it, and obviously it's a fantasy romance, so you can probably guess what happens. But I had a good time. And so I don't want people to think that like a 3 star is a bad rating. It is by no means a bad rating. I had a really good time. I really overall enjoyed it. It just left me down. Didn't have enough fantasy, but it also didn't have the romance elements that I wanted either. And so I think that's why. But so while I enjoyed it, and I did enjoy the romance, and I did enjoy the fantasy elements, like surprisingly interesting world building and politics and all of that, just there wasn't enough of either of them for me. And I guess it could also do with the fact that I haven't read a lot of romance, so I find it harder to rate romance, I guess. But for me, the book, so the 3 that I have given above 3 stars have been Get a Life Chloe Brown, which I gave 4, The Kiss Quotient, which I originally gave a 4 and then upped it to a 5, and then The Heart Principle, which I gave a 5 stars. And out of them, all of the my favorite one of those is The Kiss Quotient, and that one, like, it gave me like the butterflies, like grinning from ear to ear, just completely like in love. And I haven't gotten that with any other romance, I don't think, because even in like The Heart Principle, I didn't necessarily 5-star for the romance. I 5-starred it as a book as a whole, as like nearly more of a contemporary and like an emotional contemporary. So like I feel like that one doesn't really count. So yeah, so like absolute like in love is like a 5-star, and 4-star, so like Get a Life Chloe Brown, I had a good time. I enjoyed the banter, yeah, and I liked the characters, and that one was like a low enough 4-star, I think. And then so then I'm like I was trying to compare it then to like, so like Get a Life Chloe Brown was 4, and then I was like trying to think of like my 3-star romances, so like The Bride Test, which was a low 3-star, and then like Written in the Stars, and I was like trying to compare, and I was like, which one does it like feel closer to? And I was like, oh, but what about the fantasy elements? So I don't know how to rate fantasy romance. It's basically a bottom line, but I think I'm going with 3. While it had cute moments, the romance and the pacing of it was off. And while the politics, the intrigue of the world building, and what is all the scheming that is going on interested me, it wasn't complex and developed enough to keep me interested. So it just fell slightly flat on both of them. There was a lot about it that I liked, but neither of them delivered fully for me. Overall, I had a good time. I had a lot of fun. There was a lot of good banter between them, like when they were in like their hate stage of the relationship, where, you know, she was very like, you know, sarcastic and sassy to him, and he was just like, but she's my wife, I'm trying to be nice to her. And then he, of course, then started to give it back, and that was like for a good like 50% of the book. And then so like it was like very slow, and then all of a sudden it was very fast. I had a good time overall, but just nothing that absolutely blew my mind. And I think I will continue the second book, because where it left off, I am intrigued, and I think the second book, if done correctly, could get a 4-star. Also, I am now 66% of the way through From Blood and Ash, and I still don't like Hawk. But I really am like intrigued about the world and the plot. Like, I'm pretty sure I know where it's going. I feel like it's very predictable, but like I'm having a good time. And I'm kind of trying to read it in small chunks, because I feel like after a certain point of reading it, it gets like too much for me, because I feel it starts to like become overwhelmingly simplistic and very predictable, and if I think about it too much, I start to notice a lot of the problems with it. So I'm trying not to do that. So that's why I'm trying to read it in like smaller chunks, so that way I don't think about it too long to notice the mistakes, to notice the issues in it. On Cassidy Sprints, I think right now I'm going to start Radiance, so wish me luck. It is not much later, but I have an update. I have started Radiance, and guys, this might be the one. This might be the one that I really enjoy. I might be getting ahead of myself, because I am only 25 pages in. But yeah, I'm really enjoying this so far, because they like are disgusted by each other. They have an arranged marriage, and it's like 2 different species. So like one is human and one is a Kai. Like, they are, like, disgusted by the other. And yeah, like, they have already, like, started, like, really good banter. And yeah, I'm excited. I finished another book. So, I finished From Blood and Ash. And I think I'm gonna give it 2 stars. It was a roller coaster because it was like 3, then 4, then 3, then 4, then 3. And then it quickly went. And like the last 20% was honestly like 1 star. But I did have fun at the start of it. So that would be like way too harsh. So I'm gonna give it a 2. And it's like a decent 2. Like, it's not like the worst thing I've ever read. Like, as I said, I had a really good time and I had a lot of fun throughout the start of it. But just the last 20% was wild and not in a good way. So I've told you all of my opinions so far on it. Just a lot of fun, but I did have some issues. But like, if I didn't think about them, then where were the issues? But the last 20% really made me focus on those issues because it was just, I feel like she was trying too hard to do stuff and it just didn't work for me. I hated the romance. By the end, I had been intrigued by the world and the magic system and all of that all along. And then the last 20%, it's just like plot twist, dramatic reveal, over and over again. And all of it was stuff. Most of it was stuff that was very predictable. And then there was things added into the lore. And I just don't care. I just don't care. And as I said, all of the plot twists and reveals were extremely predictable the whole way along, and I was prepared for it. I saw it coming 17% of the way through, and it happened, and I hate it, but like, I was prepared for it, so I didn't hate it as much as I might have. And I just, yeah, I really, really hated Hawk though. Despised him. So that's fun. Hi. So it is now Sunday, so I have actually finished my last 2 books for this vlog between the time that I last spoke to you, which was I think like Thursday or Friday. And yeah, so I finished 2 and I'm going to talk to you about them now. But yeah, overall, not the most successful reading vlog I've ever done. I'll just tell you that now. But I think I told you all about the Bridge Kingdom and I told you all about From Blood and Ash. I do remember speaking to you about Radiance when I first started it and saying that I had really good feelings, and that remained true the whole way throughout. I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5 stars. I had a really, really good time with it. It was so much fun, and I don't really have too much to say about it except for the fact that I had a good time with it. I really loved both love interests. I loved their dynamic, the way they spoke to each other, and how their relationship develops throughout. And the surprising thing about this one, and I think about all of this video, is that this one, Radiance, was absolutely my favorite that I had read this week, and I gave it 4. And that is actually the one that I feel is the most romance-like. Like, it definitely feels like it is a romance story set in a fantasy setting. There's like 20 pages of like a fantasy plotline, and that is about it. The rest of it is all romance plotline, and I loved it for that. That is why I really enjoyed it. So From Blood and Ash and Fortune Sworn both didn't work for me because they have that territorial, kind of pushy mate, and I know that is a thing that a lot of people enjoy, which obviously, because like I know a lot of people, that's problematic and whatever. I'm not going to shame you for that. Like, I don't care whether or not you enjoy that. It's a fiction. You can enjoy whatever you want, even if it's problematic. But I personally, it just doesn't do anything for me. That's probably the reason why those 2 weren't for me. But for the Bridge Kingdom, that one didn't work for me because it just didn't get there in the romance plotline or in the fantasy plotline. Because it was trying to do both of them, it just fell flat for both of them. And while I really had a good time with that one, it left me feeling wanting more. Anyway, sorry, I forgot where I was because I was summoned. But I was just talking about how, so From Blood and Ash and Fortune Sworn were never going to work for me because of the type of love interest. And I mean, that's good because I can ask people or just read up on it and know what kind of books to avoid. I know that no matter what, that doesn't do it for me. For the Bridge Kingdom, that one, you know, like arranged marriage, that totally works for me. And like that kind of like enemies to lovers thing, it can work for me. But it was just like the fantasy and the romance just didn't quite get there. And then, as I said, because I'm supposed to be talking about Radiance, not the other books, I had such a good time. So Radiance, it follows, again, another arranged marriage, but this one is, instead of enemies to lovers, it's actually kind of more friends to lovers. So while their species are kind of enemies, and like this is an alliance, they meet before the wedding in a garden. They don't know that it's their future spouse, and they are, as I said, one is human and the other is a Kai, and they both find each other absolutely repulsive, and because they don't know who they're speaking to, they kind of just voice this, like they're talking about the differences between their people, and they flat out like called each other ugly and horrendous, and then they realize, oh my god, this is the person I'm marrying. From that conversation, they're both like, okay, they're very kind and agreeable, and they don't mind me speaking the truth. And so both of them are just like, hey, we can just be friends. We don't have to actually do anything, because the likelihood of us having kids because of being two different species is like basically nothing. And so they're just like, so they start off on a very friendly basis, and then throughout the book, obviously, they do fall in love with each other, and that was just so. That made for such an entertaining banter between the two of them, because they're just like constantly calling each other ugly, and like, but like they just truly, like, even from pretty early on in the book, it's not insta-love, but it's just like they care for each other as first as friends, and it just, seeing it develop into something more was really, really sweet. And yeah, and I do think like the fantasy elements, while definitely not a focus of the story, they were interesting, like learning about the different species, and like there was like a small bit of background politics. And I feel like if I do continue with the series, which I might or might not, based on the end, I do think that like more of a fantasy plotline will play into future books. So that's kind of why I'm a little nervous whether or not to continue the series, because as I pointed out, I feel like it's very hard to balance the fantasy and the romance. But I am intrigued. So I really loved it. I loved their banter, and as I said, this was the most like romance heavy of them all, I feel. And yeah, and I shipped it like crazy. I love them. I love their relationship, and like it gave me butterflies. It gave me those like fuzzy feelings. Like, I loved it. And so then that brings us on to the very last book that I read for this vlog, and that was Fortuna Sworn by KJ Sutton. And unfortunately, I gave this a 2 out of 5 stars, so I was definitely right when I said that I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about it. Unfortunately, I was hoping I was going to be proved wrong, because I mean, I had been wrong about basically all of the books so far. Like I predicted Bridge Kingdom would be 4, Radiance would be 3, Blood and Ash would be 3, and so I was hoping that this one, again, I would be wrong and it would actually be higher, and that's just not the case. And the thing is, I actually didn't actively dislike this, which is the odd thing. Like I didn't like absolutely hate it or something. That's just not true. But I just did not like anything about the story. There was nothing that really hooked me in or anything like that. So yeah, so it was again a very neutral feeling that I had towards it, which is very odd for me, because I feel like I usually do have something to cling on to, and now twice in like a week or two I have had 2 books that I just feel absolutely nothing towards. Though this one I do feel slightly more negative about. Then The Wheel of Time is the other one that I felt very neutral about. Whereas this one definitely leans towards dislike. But yeah, and like the thing is, this felt like a mix of all the things I dislike about Sarah J Maas, Cassandra Clare, and Holly Black mixed into one. And I would like to say I have enjoyed books from all of those authors. So like I don't actively like hate all of them, but it's like she took all of the elements from their books that I don't care about and put them into one. I can definitely see why so many people like this, because those elements, a lot of people love those things, but again, all personal preference, not my cup of tea. So I'll talk about the positives first because there's few of them. So Fortuna Sworn follows our character called Fortuna, and she is a nightmare, the last of her kind, and her brother went missing years before. Everyone thinks he's dead, she doesn't, and then one day a fairy shows up and is like, hey, and kind of tells her that he knows where her brother is and he will take her to him if she will marry him. And so she agrees to this bargain, and then she gets herself in for more than she originally thought. There's not much that I did like, but there was a few things. Number one, it is very fast-paced and action-packed. Like, it is such a quick read. Like, I read it in 2 sittings, and yeah, and I just absolutely flew through it, and there is constant movement. Like, there's not a moment where like the whole story stops. But I still just wasn't like interested, and none of it actually captivated me. And then there was 2 characters that I was really intrigued by, called Oliver and Laurie. Both of those really intrigued me. And then the last thing that I really liked was the final chapter, and especially the final line, and it really made me want to continue the story, but I was like, no, you did not like this book. And so I asked Lizzie, who has read the first 3, to spoil the second book for me, and I'm so glad I did not decide to continue the series because I know that I would not enjoy where the story goes. I did not like Fortuna. I just did not care for her whatsoever, and I also did not like her love interest, and I just felt there was nothing between them. There was no chemistry whatsoever. At least, even though I didn't like Poppy and Hawk together, at least they had their moments of like chemistry and like sexual tension, but there was nothing here. I don't understand why people could ship it, because like there was nothing. I had that kind of that mate, you're mine forever kind of thing that I absolutely despise. So the plot, it was quick but forgettable, and it was filled with conveniences. And then the very final thing that I will talk about is the writing. I am not someone who usually complains about writing styles. I'm someone who will like compliment a writing style if I really enjoy it. But I'm very rarely someone who points out flaws in writing, because I very rarely spot things, because I'm gonna be honest, I'm a terrible speller. I'm terrible with grammar. So like, I usually don't criticize that stuff. But I could point out like spelling mistakes, grammar things, and like that's how you know it's like not well done. And I feel really bad saying that because it's obviously self-published, but I don't feel like that gives it like a get out of jail free card for this kind of stuff. And like, I also complained about it with the Bridge Kingdom because I also noticed mistakes in that, and that was also self-published. And same with From Blood and Ash, that also had a couple of things, but like I think also because I was listening to the audiobook, a lot harder to notice mistakes than when you're physically reading. I think it could have done with like another round of editing, but that didn't happen, I guess. So yeah, I did catch some, and it wasn't just writing and grammar, because there wasn't that many. Like, I could kind of get over it, but it was just the writing in general was just very forced sometimes. Like, the dialogue, it didn't feel natural. It felt like just the way some of the sentences were. I was like, nobody would actually put it that way in real life. And like, that wasn't like the fairies talking, because I get like, you know, fairies, tricksters and all of that. It was like the way like people who were in the normal world were talking, and like I was like, nobody talks like that. The very last thing, and I will say this was on page 2, and this bugged me to no end, and it probably set the tone for the entire book, because this was the line: fallen, I hadn't used that term in ages. Every species, fairies, werewolves, shapeshifters, nymphs, were descended from angels. No one knew whether it was mutation or evolution that had separated us. See, there's something wrong with that sentence, which is, mutation causes evolution. Literally page 2. Already a mistake. I'm like, it literally would have taken you 2 seconds to Google that. That just like set the tone for me, and I was like, oh, I'm in for a ride. And so that brings us to the end of my week of reading fantasy romance. So we had a wide range of books and opinions, and so I think my average rating is actually the same for what I gave the contemporary romance week and the fantasy romance week, but I feel like the contemporary romance was slightly more successful. A mixed bag. And I think I mean, obviously it's a very small sample size, so I can't like completely say, okay, I'm completely ruling out this trope and all of this stuff. But it's a start for finding out what I do and don't like in it. But I will say, recommend if you have any fantasy romances, which are just like romance plotlines that just happen to be in a fantasy world, totally recommend them to me, because I feel like that's the direction I'm gonna want to go with fantasy romance. Also, if there's any genres, subgenres that you would like to see me spend a week trying, also totally let me know. And I think that is all. So thank you guys so much for watching. I do hope you enjoyed. If you did, subscribe, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye.